Thank you so much, Pak Subin, already here. And before we start, let me a little bit introduce about Sandler. Just 1 minute. And okay, first of all, thank you for your time, participants, to join today's session. By the way, today's session will last until 2:55 because Pak Subin have to leave at 2:55. So if you have questions, please type your questions early in the chat. Later, Pak Subin will try to answer after the presentation. Okay, so a little bit about Sandler. We are a trading company based in US, out of Owings Mills, Maryland, and we specialize in Salesforce development. So today's session is very, very special because Pak Subin gets to share, and we are very honored that he set aside his time for 1 hour to share the gold standard of the customer experience or customer service in the world. I remember reading the book, Ritz Carlton Gold Standards, and today I think this is a very rare chance to hear directly from the gentleman of Ritz Carlton, which is Pak Subin today. And then I think that's it from me. Please, I hope today the internet is cooperative. Pak Subin, are you ready?
As ready as I can be.
Oh, thank you. I can hear you very, very clearly. Thank you, sir, for your time. I know 1 hour now is August is business planning period for many companies. Many companies also busy. So 2:55 we will end the session. So the floor is yours. You can maybe share a little bit about Ritz Carlton Gold Standard. And then maybe after 30, 35 or 40 minutes, in the meantime, the question will start coming in, and then we use whatever time's left to just answer questions. Is that okay with you?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so the floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Sure. So good afternoon, everybody. I think everybody is pretty much from Indonesia. So good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the session. I can only see myself, but that should be okay. All right. So I think as Pa Robert said, today we are here to talk about the Ritz Carlton Gold Standards, right? I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the brand, how many of you are familiar with the company, but for those of who you know, I mean, how many of you know? It's considered as probably the benchmark of luxury service, the Ritz Carlton Gold Standards all over the world, right? So I have a small presentation for you for the Ritz Carlton Gold Standards, which I'm happy to share, right? So in the best interest of time, we have around, let's say, 50 minutes left. So what I would do is I would talk to you a little bit about the company first, and then move on to the gold standards. But in the meanwhile, just a couple of things, to start about the company. Ritz Carlton is considered as the most iconic luxury company in the world because of the way we deliver service, right? So I'm sure many of you know Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, right? So if you recollect, right, and if any, I don't know if anybody knows about this, but the voice, okay, I hear that there's some feedback that the voice is, you're not able to hear me. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, very clear, Pak. I think there was some voice. Please, participants, mute yourself if you're not, because now later maybe if you have questions, then we will allow you to speak. If not, please mute yourself. Thank you. Go ahead, Pak. Pak Subin, thank you.
So I was talking about.
Kalau mau dibuat.
Okay, so I was talking about about Steve Jobs, right? So Steve Jobs used to ask one question to all his everybody he interviewed, basically all his interviewees. And that was a standard question in all his interviews, was, can you provide service like Ritz Carlton does, right? And everybody had to answer that question in order to work in Apple. And the reason why Steve Jobs did that is because, obviously you can imagine that Steve Jobs always wanted only the best, right? And if you have been to any of the Apple stores all over the world, right? Whether it's in New York or any of the main Apple stores, you will see that the Apple stores are designed in a particular way, right? So they have taken inspiration from the Ritz Carlton concierge, where the Ritz Carlton ladies and gentlemen are able to answer any questions to any guest. So you don't have to particularly go to a particular section of the hotel to get the answers to the question. So so Steve Jobs was a big fan of the company and the way the company conducted itself, right? So that gives you a good testament to what the level of service is in the Ritz Carlton. See, what sets the company apart from every other hotel company in the world is simply the fact that we have a culture, right? Everybody understands the term culture, right? Culture is what you get from what you learn from your parents, right? These are sets of ideology, beliefs, let's say values. It's what defines what's important to you, right? And it determines the people's thoughts, emotions, and basically your performance, right? It's based on your culture. So the secret recipe for the Ritz Carlton is it's got a culture. And I always say this to everybody, right? In front of all my competitors, all my colleagues. And I've worked in the industry for a while now, that Ritz Carlton is the only company in the world which has got a culture, right? And that is exactly the reason why the company differentiates itself from every other hotel company in the world, right? And that is also the reason why the legendary service, which I'm about to introduce to you now, is intact, right? And has not changed over the last 35 years. It's been consistent, and we've been able to deliver this for all our 203 hotels all over the world consistently. And people always swear, in the name of service with the Ritz Carlton. Okay. So I'm going to I'm going to share my screen, right? And hold on one second. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's very clear.
Okay, so that's the okay, that's my slide. So as you can see, right, the first slide, it says, let us stay with you, right? So typically when you come to a hotel, the first thing that, or any other hotel company in the world would tell you is to stay with them, right? In the Ritz Carlton, it's the other way around. We say, let us stay with you. We're going to come back to this in the end of the session, and I'm going to ask you some questions. Yeah. So we're going to the next slide, which is the gold standards, and this is what Pa Robert spoke about earlier, right? He mentioned about the Ritz Carlton gold standards. Now, this is part of the culture that we have in the hotel and in the Ritz Carlton company, right? There are 5 gold standards that we follow. Now, like every other company in the world, right? We are not a strange company, right? We also like every other company, but the difference is that, we have the gold standards, which is our why, the purpose why we exist, right? And you have companies also having similar vision and mission, and they have their own gold standards. But why is it that the Ritz Carlton is able to find success more than every other service company in the world? The reason is because we have the gold standards, but we practice the gold standards every single day. right? So when our ladies and gentlemen come to work, whether it's in the morning, whether it's in the night, whether it's in the afternoon, right? We have something called as commitment to excellence, which is a guide which is sent by the head office to all the hotels, and we practice a gold standards every single day, right? We don't go through all the gold standards, but we pick and select gold standards, and we practice living these gold standards every day. We share examples, we talk about this, right? And then there are many other things we talk about, which as soon as we progress, I'll talk to you about it. Okay. So the first gold standard that you see here is a credo, and before we get into that, I just remembered, right? I'm showing you here, if you can see me on the screen still, that's a credo card, right? So this is something which every Ritz Carlton lady and gentleman carry in their pocket, and they're supposed to carry this in their pocket every single day. And people who work with the company know this, right? And this is part of your uniform. And one thing is to carry this, the other thing is to remember and to understand what it means and to be able to explain this. So the first gold standard credo, I have it here, right? Is the, as you can see here, I changed my screen, and if you can read it, right, it is in 3 paragraphs. So this is the foundation, and I would say the North Star, right? The North Star, the compass of what we do at the Ritz Carlton, right? Credo in Latin means I believe, right? And you know, everything that we do here, right, in one way or the other touches a credo, right? So I'm going to read it out for you so that and explain it to you a little bit, right? So it says here, the Ritz Carlton is a place where the genuine care and comfort of our guests is the highest mission, right? We pledge to provide the finest personal service and facilities for our guests who will always enjoy a warm, relaxed, yet refined ambience. The Ritz Carlton enlivens the senses, instills well-being, and fulfills even the unexpressed wishes and needs of our guests, right? So 3 simple paragraphs, but here, you know, we say that every lady and gentleman who work for the company, let's say whether it's an engineer, whether it's a chef, whether it's a service personnel, all of them have only one job, right? So if you ask anybody in the hotel and ask them, you know, whether it's a receptionist, you know, or the loss prevention officer, and they will all tell you one answer, right? They will all tell you that their job is the genuine care of our guest, right? Which means that, you know, the role is different, right? But the purpose is the same. So, for example, you know, if you have, and let's say if you have an engineer who's in the lobby who's changing a light bulb, and a guest is walking in and trying to open his door, and for some reason, you know, there's nobody at the door and nobody at the reception, you know, the engineer would automatically come and leave what he is doing with the bulb and take care of the guest, right? Because part of the culture, the number one point in our culture is that the genuine care of our guests is our main job, right? That's our highest mission. There's nothing more important than that, right? And this is drilled into the system. This is part of our culture, right? So another thing is, and that's what probably makes a big difference, right? Because it all starts with genuine care. Now, if I was to ask you what is genuine care, and I'm so used to doing an interactive session, so I feel a little monotonous talking all the time, but that's okay. I guess in this forum, that's why we have to do it now. So think about genuine care for a second, right? What resonates with you, or what do you think of when you hear genuine care, right? What comes to your mind? Genuine care, right? It comes from the heart, right? It's a heartfelt service. That's genuine care, right? And the closest thing, and you know, whenever I talk to the ladies and gentlemen, you know, and whenever we talk about genuine care, I always tell them one thing, right? I always say, genuine care the easiest example for anybody to understand this is what your mother does for you, right? Because, you know, sometimes you leave a room in a mess, you come back and it's done, right? Who does that for you? Your mother, right? Because yeah, because she genuinely cares for you, right? You come back, your room is done, and your pant was probably torn, but she stitched it up for you, right? That's genuine care, right? And so, but that's the level of service we expect every uh, every individual, every lady and gentleman working in the Ritz Carlton to deliver. The level of service has to be genuine, right? It has to come from the heart. Now, you may ask, okay, how is that possible, right? So it all starts with the recruitment process, right? One of the biggest criteria that we look at when we employ or hire the ladies and gentlemen for Ritz Carlton, our selection process is to check whether the lady or gentleman is a culture fit, right? So then we know if he or she is culturally fit to carry on with a genuine care or not, right? The second part in the paragraph is, as you can see, is a promise, right? Pledge is a promise. So we are promising to provide personalized service, right? So this is a differentiator again. The second differentiator is personalized service. So everybody, you know, provides service, you know, and so nowadays, you know, when I walk into a Japanese restaurant, you know, whether it's in a mall or anywhere, you know, they all wish you, right? Maybe they're doing something else, but they all say, they all wish you. And sometimes you walk into a store and they all wish you, but they're not even looking at you, right? They're just looking down, doing their own things, but they wish you because they've been told to wish you, right? That's not personalized, right? That's a service standard, and that's what many companies have. They have service standards. But in the Ritz Carlton, it's important that you personalize the service, right? So here, every employee makes a promise to provide personalized service for our guest, right? And in the same sentence, you'll also read, it says, who will always enjoy a warm, relaxed, yet refined ambience. So a lot of times, you know, you've probably walked into a store, into a luxury store, right? Where it can be very intimidating because you don't feel welcome, right? Because uh, they're not kind to you, for example, right? So, and it's very important that when you walk into a Ritz Carlton, we keep you at ease, right? And that you feel that you're welcome, right? And that's there's a fine line between arrogance, yeah, and warmth. So we have to make sure that, you know, everybody feels warm and welcome. You know, I remember this little story where, you know, when I was in Ritz Carlton in Doha in Qatar, one day I was in an owners meeting, and the CEO of the company told me, you know, this gentleman was in New York in Central Park, the Ritz Carlton Central Park, and you know, it started raining, and then what happened all of a sudden is he was, you know, in his jogging clothes with his wife, and he had his dog. So and he was getting wet, right? So he said, okay, let me just walk into the Ritz Carlton and get some shade. I mean, not get wet. So he walks in there, and then guess what happens, right? So typically, you know, you're not a Ritz Carlton guest, right? You are, you know, you're wet. You walk into the hotel lobby. What do you expect, right? Would they expect you? Do you expect to be greeted by them and taken in? But to his surprise, you know, they took him in, and they actually gave him towels, and they actually did a blow dry for his dog, right? And he was not a Ritz Carlton guest, but he's somebody who's walked in. So, you know, that genuine care kicked in, and he says that happened to him. I mean, I heard the story a few years back when I was there at Carlton Doha, and that story probably happened to him 5-10 years back, and he still talks about this story, right? So that's the level of mark that the genuine care and Ritz Carlton leaves to every ladies and gentlemen, right? The last paragraph talks about the senses, right? The five, everybody knows about the five senses, yeah? Your sight, your smell, your hearing. So before our ladies and gentlemen prepare, meeting a client, meeting anybody, they always prepare, make sure that all the five senses are enlivened, right? Whether it's serving food, whether it's showing a guest room, we have to make sure that all these five senses are met, right, before we do anything. That's the reason we talk about these five senses. And then the most important part there is to anticipate the guest needs, right? So we're talking about fulfilling the unexpressed wishes and needs of our guest. So I think the sentence is very clear there, right? It talks about fulfilling the unexpressed wishes and needs. So what does that mean? So which means a guest doesn't necessarily have to tell you what he or she needs, right? So when you are a Ritz Carlton lady and gentleman, you have to literally plan and try and find out what is this guest wishing for, right? What is in this guest's mind? We have to anticipate and we have to deliver it, right? For example, let's say that a guest calls and says to the hotel and says that, okay, I need a bed made of gold, right? I want to change my bed and I need a bed of gold now. And we deliver it. Is that an unexpressed wish? No, right? So that's not good enough. When you work at the Ritz Carlton, that's not good enough because the guest has asked for it, right? The level of service we provide, we are expected to deliver this without the guest having to ask for us, right? Ask for this level of service. So that's a level we're looking at. So Credo, like I said, is a foundation of that we do. So if I was to sum it up, right? So the most important thing is genuine care, right? All our ladies and gentlemen are expected to perform with genuine care. We have to make sure that we provide personalized service. So which means, when Smith comes here and then you have Sarah coming here, we are not expected to provide the same level of service because, your customers are different, right? So let's take a moment to talk about customers, luxury customers. So what do you think? What is the difference between a luxury customer and a normal customer, right? Let's think about it for a moment. A luxury customer and a normal customer. Think about it, right? What would be the difference, right? So the luxury customer is someone who is probably, a celebrity, somebody who, is in a very high level position, who probably runs a company, who is probably having some responsibility, very high responsibility, and is used to everybody recognizing him or her, and used to being in the spotlight, right? So which means when this person enters a room, he or she expects, like what he or she receives in the outside world, right, to be recognized and to be in the spotlight. So what happens if your luxury customer walks in and he or she has to stand in line and is now taken out from his or her comfort zone, right, and has to be like everybody else? What do you expect this person is going to feel, right? You already lost the battle before it even started. Yeah. So in order for us to cater to luxury customers, we have to always know them very well, right? You have to personalize the service levels, right? And that's why, whether it's a sales and marketing team, whether it's a front desk team, whether it's a housekeeping team, all our service interactions are personalized, right? So when a housekeeper goes to clean a room, the housekeeper needs to look at a particular room, in with genuine care, like your mother would come to your room, right? And that's what we tell the housekeepers when they go to the room, right? So when they clean, if they find a torn pant, right? And if they think that they are empowered to repair it, right? If they find a dirty comb, they clean it for you. If they find medicines, they might leave an extra bottle of water for you, right? So little things, right? And depends on which side of the bed you are sleeping. So they might make sure that side of the bed is not tucked in, so that it's easy for you to come in. Maybe your shoes, you had not cleaned your shoes and you left it there, right? So they might clean that for you. So that's from the housekeeper side, right? So anticipating and fulfilling the unexpressed wishes and needs of our guests. And it's also personalized service, right? And depending on, maybe you had a whole day of meeting, and the housekeeper has realized this, right? So what he or she would do is probably fill up your bathtub, time it when you're going to finish the meeting, maybe speak to the banquet manager and say, okay, this person's meeting should get over at this time, make sure the water is warm when he or she comes in, maybe leave a beer for you by the bathtub, because he or she knows your preference, right? Similarly, maybe a sales and marketing a manager, before he or she meets the client, right, would know what this client likes and dislikes. So there's a lot of research also that goes in before the client comes in, right? We have so a lot of the time what we spend in the hotel is also doing a lot of research about the guest and trying and finding out, right? And a lot of times we are not able to get all the information out, right? So we try to do this when the guest is in house, right? We try to have a conversation with the guest and try and find out why is the guest here, what is important for them, and what can we do to wow the guest, right, in every interaction that we have. Yeah, so that's a credo. Yeah. I see some, I don't know if there are questions or not, I can't see it right now, but I think I should address it towards the end, right?
Yes, Pak.
Yeah, okay. So
yeah, agree.
Carry on, yeah?
Maybe you can continue with the presentation first. Yeah?
Okay, all right.
Okay, so, thanks, Pak.
Yeah, okay, I'll try to keep it short and then have more time for questions, yeah, so that I can address your specific questions. Okay, the second one is a motto. This is something which probably some of you already know or heard of. It's a very famous motto from the Ritz Carlton. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, right? As it says, it's very clear, right? It's all about respect. So it basically tells our ladies and gentlemen, right, that we are not servants, where we are service professionals, and we are as qualified as our luxury customers who come in. We always tell the ladies and gentlemen, that so when they are hired here, we have probably, that's a company ratio. For every single lady and gentleman hired at the Ritz Carlton, we have probably rejected another 200 to 300 applicants who were not successful, right? So in one way or the other, we like to say that we are the top 1% of the top service professionals in the world, right? If you like football, and I know that Barcelona is a little bit down now, but it's like playing for Barcelona or PSG, right? Or Real Madrid, or some of the other clubs, right? So that's the pride you have when you work for the Ritz Carlton. So it's not possible unless and until you have you give respect to each other. So some of the companies, I remember, quite often say that when you're on stage, right? So when you walk in through that door, and from the back door to the main door, that you are on stage, right? But when you work for the Ritz Carlton, you're on stage for your life. So it doesn't matter you're in the hotel, it doesn't matter you're outside, right? Because like I said in the beginning, it's a culture, right? The service culture, it's a culture that you have, it's your values. So you treat people with respect. It doesn't matter it's your subordinate, it doesn't matter it's your vendor, it doesn't matter it's your guest. Yeah, it doesn't matter somebody who's walking to the hotel. We treat everybody with respect, right? And this is something that's drilled in, and everybody believes in that. So like I said about the selection process, right? So when we do the selection process, this is another thing that we look at. Is this person somebody, who treats everybody with respect, right? They can be part of that. So, we have to follow that throughout, right? So exactly how we treat our guests, we have to treat each other, right? Whether it's in the back office, whether it's in the, in the storeroom, it doesn't matter where you are, right? But that's a philosophy. I remember this, when I started my career earlier, my boss at that time, and I was not working for Ritz Carlton, when I started my career, and he used to always use this philosophy of we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure where he got it from, right? But very early days in my career, this was something that he had taught me and was with me. And when I joined the company, I was surprised, and I didn't know it till that time that this came from the Ritz Carlton. Yeah, so I was happy that was part of my system, right? So that's a motto, right? And now we're going to carry on to the 3 steps of service. Okay. Okay, that's a very nice gold standard and a tool, yeah, that we use in every interaction that we have with a guest. We call it the 3 steps of service. Now, what does that mean? So let's say that, I'm meeting somebody in the lobby, I'm meeting somebody, not necessarily me, right? But any of our ladies and gentlemen, whether it's a housekeeper, whether it's a bellman, whether it's a receptionist, somebody who works in the banqueting is going to meet somebody anywhere, maybe in the corridor, right? Or they have an appointment, or it could be somebody who's sitting in a restaurant and placing an order, right? So any interaction that you have with any of the customers, the Ritz Carlton ladies and gentlemen use the 3 steps of service. What does that mean? Step number one, you always greet the guest, right? Depending on whether it's which time of the day, and you use the guest name. Now the question probably all of you have in your mind is, how do you know the guest name all the time, right? The fact is you don't know the guest name all the time, especially if you meet the guest in a corridor and you don't know who this guest is, right? So what do you do in that case? In that case, you always, listen to the guest if the guest approaches you and talks to you, right? But you always introduce yourself, and you can always ask for the guest name and use a guest name to talk, right? So there's already, you formed a small personal connect with the guest because you have addressed the guest by his or her name, right? And then you anticipate and fulfill the needs. Now, imagine that, the guest just asked you the way to the gym, for example, right? And he asked the housekeeper or anyone, right? Maybe a chef, right? He met the chef in the corridor. He was crossing from the lobby, and he asked the chef, "Oh, can you please tell me where the gym is?" Right? So there are many ways you can handle this, right? You can go and tell the guest, okay, you can walk with the guest to the gym all the way and show the guest. You can just give directions, right? And you can bring the guest there. So let's say in an example that you took the guest and you brought the guest personally to the gym and you dropped the guest there. Is that good enough? Right? In the Ritz Carlton, it is not good enough, right? Why? In a lot of places, they might just even point out, okay, it's just around the corner there, right? That's absolutely a no-no. You personally escort the guest, yes, but is that good enough? No, right? Because you have not fulfilled and anticipated the guest need, right? Remember what I told you in the beginning, when the guest called you and asked you for to change the bet to a bed of gold, and you changed it. Does that satisfy? Does that meet the requirement of Ritz Carlton service? Absolutely not, because the guest asked you for it, right? So it was a requirement which you just fulfilled. So the requirement is for you to engage with that particular guest and try and find out, right? So do you work out every day? Is that something? Is it a part of your routine? Right? What time do you work out? I mean, in a nice way, you need to find out without evading the guest's personal space, right? And when you find that out, right, then you may be able to do something else for the guest, right? Maybe you found out
that the guest typically likes to run outside, right? And 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 here, in this case, he's using the gym because he's not very familiar with what the city has to offer, or he doesn't know about the running track, right? So what a Ritz Carlton lady or gentleman would do, in this case, is try and, depending on where the conversation would take them, right, would anticipate the need. And for example, let's assume that in this interaction, he found out that the guest actually likes to jog and not necessarily come to the gym, or does both, right? And was missing his or her run in the last couple of days since the guest has been staying with us, right? So what a Ritz Carlton lady or gentleman would do is actually have a maybe leave a note in his or her room, right, with a jogging map if the hotel has it. In this particular example, right, with an we address to the guest by his name, right, because he knows the name, so you can find out the room number, and then also introducing himself or herself, saying that I'm Smith, I met you earlier today, and more than happy to introduce you to the jogging map of the hotel, plus what else is there. Maybe there are some other programs the hotel has to offer, right? And it is left in his room with a little note, and then maybe a bottle of water or something else to run with in the morning, with a little refreshing towel that comes in the morning, right? So imagine every single interaction the guest has throughout the hotel. Every lady or gentleman is trying to anticipate the needs and fulfill the unexpressed wishes and needs of our guests. What happens in that case? When it happens over a series of time and then series of interactions, the whole journey of the guest or the stay of the guest is completely changed, right? Because every lady and gentleman just did not walk past or just did not fulfill a wish, but anticipated the guest needs and try to personalize it for him or her, right? And another more important thing, which I'm not sure how many of you know it, but every lady and gentleman that Ritz Carlton is empowered, right? They are empowered to take these decisions, right? And send something to the guest. So everybody's empowered up to a value of $2,000, right? The guest, they can take their own decisions to either solve a problem or to delight a guest, right? And no questions are asked. So this is a company standard that we do, and we believe that the ladies and gentlemen would always take the right decision, right? To use this empowerment that they have. Okay, and then the last step is obviously the using the guest name, right? And saying goodbye. Now, see, think about it. It's as good as you meeting somebody. When you have a guest over to your house, right? What do you do? Let's say your best friend is coming to your house. It's no different, right? You may go down to the door, outside the door, right? Welcome him, right? Maybe you prepare something. Maybe he or she likes to drink something. You anticipate the needs, right? When they come to your house, and and you take care of them. And when they leave, you give them a hug. You walk them out. It's no different, right? The only difference here is, not all the time we know our guest, right? So that's why we have to make that effort to engage and interact with our guests, right? So that's the 3 steps of service, right? So that's the 3rd gold standard. Yeah. I'm also cautious of the time. So we have 10 more minutes. So I want to quickly go through the next 2 gold standards, right? And maybe not go deep into them. And then I'm going to go for some question and answers. So the next gold standard is the employee promise. So as you can imagine, there's a lot expected from the ladies and gentlemen, right? So without having a commitment to the ladies and gentlemen, you can't ask the world out of them, right? So the employee promise is for everybody, including myself, for all the ladies and gentlemen. So the first paragraph says that, the ladies and gentlemen are the most important resource. There's nothing more important than the ladies and gentlemen, right? And then there are some values that we speak about, right? Trust, honesty, respect, integrity, and commitment, right? And if you read this paragraph, it says here, we nurture this to the benefit of each individual and the company, right? So which means the individual comes before the company, yeah? And the third paragraph talks about fostering a work environment, where diversity is valued, right? The individual aspirations are fulfilled and the Ritz Carlton mystique is strengthened. Now, what are the individual aspirations? So somebody like me, who has been, and many of the Ritz Carlton ladies and gentlemen that you would meet, right? Most of the general managers are homegrown general managers. We've grown up within the company, and we've all traveled in many countries, right, across Ritz Carltons, and it's a known fact that all of us at the Ritz Carlton, we pretty much know each other because we've worked in different parts of the world, and the company values diversity and takes in everybody from every part of the world, and the company fulfills individual aspirations, right? And the Ritz Carlton mystique is a sixth sense. Remember, we spoke about 5 senses. So the mystique is the sixth sense. I'll come to it with one of the service values, that I'm going to talk about. Okay, so it's a very in-depth topic, the employee promise, but in the best interest of the time, right, I'm going to skip to the next gold standard. But just for all of you to know that this is a key part of the gold standard, right? Because it's impossible to have everything else, if we don't take care of our ladies and gentlemen, right? Okay. This is the 5th gold standards. These are called the service values. These are the 12 service values, right? So here, everything starts with I, right? So which means that this is an undertaking, right? You are making a commitment, right? I am responsible, I build, I understand, I have the opportunity, I'm involved, right? So this is how we conduct ourselves. So the 12 service values are all actionable. Yeah. So when you work for the Ritz Carlton, you are expected to follow the 12 service values, right? And fulfill them in every interaction, yeah, with the guests, with our fellow ladies and gentlemen, when you work for the company, right? So we break this down, the service values, in 3 parts. So let me go to the next slide, right? So from service value number 10 to 12 are the service values which are functional, right? As is written here, yeah? So these are everything to do with, as you can see, safety, security, appearance, language. So a lot of hotels in the world get this right? The functional part, right? And so we want to make sure that we excel in this. This is also important, right? And then you have service values from 4 to 9. So these are the emotional engagement parts, right? This is where your emotions come in, the involvement, the learning and growing of the ladies and gentlemen, right? Lateral service. Now, when you work for the Ritz Carlton, it's normal, right? That we all work everywhere, right? So if tomorrow the hotel is busy and you have, let's say, I don't know, 150 rooms who are checking out and another 150 checking in, at the same time, you probably don't have the number of ladies and gentlemen to clean the room and turn it around, right? Same thing. If you have 600 people for breakfast at the same time, you necessarily don't have, you're not staffed for it, right? So what happens? So in every Ritz Carlton all over the world, there is something called as lateral service. So we all help each other. So whether it's myself, the executive team, the managers, the HR department, sales department, finance department, we are there in the restaurants cleaning. We are there in the restaurants clearing the plates. We are in the floors cleaning the rooms, right? And that's lateral service. So because if we don't do that, the hotel is not able to provide the level of service we want to provide to everybody else, right? So that's one part of the service value, that all of us are committed to providing lateral service. So tomorrow, right, another department needs, then everybody's there, right? I remember this when I was in Ritz Carlton St. Thomas, and I was once standing in the lobby with my general manager at that time, and a guest walked up to us and actually looked at my general manager and said, "I saw you. You made my omelette at breakfast this morning, and you parked my car, and you cleaned my room. Who are you, right? And you are standing here in the lobby." So my general manager replied, "I work at the hotel, and I'm one of the ladies and gentlemen." Right. So then I told the guest, this is our general manager, and he was our cluster general manager of two of the Ritz Carltons there. So that's how the company operates, right? And similarly, we have service values, right? We have from 4 to 9, 6 service values in this. Because of the timing, I don't have the time to go through all, but just giving you some examples, right? And the last part, and before I move on, okay, the last one is a mystique. I'm just keeping a track of time. So this is number 1 to 3. Remember, we spoke about the mystique earlier, right? And this one I can proudly say, probably service values 4 to 9 are the service values which maybe some of the hotels do have, right? But 1 to 3 is a key differentiator for the Ritz Carlton. This is about fulfilling the unexpressed wishes and needs. It's about creating unique, memorable, and personalized experiences for our guests. It's about building lifetime relationships for our guests, right? And this happens because of what we do every single day in every single interaction, right? We have something called as essential vows, where we go and anticipate the unexpressed wishes and needs in every interaction that the guest has, in multiple interactions throughout the day. When all this combines together, that's when the mystique happens, right? You're constantly creating memorable experiences for our guests, and you're building lifetime relationships with the guest. So there is a huge difference between emotional engagement, let's say full engagement, and guest satisfaction. So typically, when you go to let's say a service organization, right? You get a survey, a guest satisfaction survey, right? So at the Ritz Carlton, we are not looking necessarily at satisfaction survey. We are looking at engagement, full engagement, very different, right? So we don't want satisfied customers. We want fully engaged customers. What's the difference? The difference is, let's say, a fully engaged customer is someone who loves your brand, who's engaged with your brand, right? I'm sure all of you have certain brands that you're completely engaged with, and everything that you do, you go with this brand because you're engaged with the brand, right? You love the brand. So typically, let's say a fully engaged customer, if they're going to travel somewhere in the world, right, they would go into the Ritz Carlton website and see if there is a Ritz Carlton in that part of the world, and then decide to travel. Not look at, first look at the destination, then look at the cheaper deal and go there. That's not a Ritz Carlton customer. A fully engaged Ritz Carlton customer would travel with the Ritz Carlton all over the world, right? So that's the difference between a fully engaged guest and otherwise. And you would see the same fact with a lot of ladies and gentlemen who work with us, right? Including myself. So how did I end up here in Jakarta? Because I looked at the next destination. Where is the availability of the next Ritz Carlton? I saw, okay, Jakarta. Okay, then I'm coming to Jakarta, right? So that's full engagement. Yeah. Okay, so that's the mystique part. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. I'm sorry I had to rush it, right? Because we have to keep at least 5 minutes, for the question and answers. Yeah, I apologize. I had to speak very fast to accommodate as much as possible, right? Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Subin, for the great presentation. And then I think we're mindful of your time here. You have to leave at 2:55, and then I think we just have time for probably just 1 or 2 questions. Let me start with the first question, Pak.
Okay.
how would you monitor every, I mean, I'm trying to summarize here. How do you make sure that everyone is doing the service quality like this, the one we just shared?
Sure. So, we have something called as commitment to excellence. Yeah. So every single guest that stays in the hotel or doesn't stay in the hotel, whether it's an event or it's a meeting that we have a communication that happens every day, right? And we share information about this guest, the preferences. So remember, I spoke about the 3 steps of service, right? Anticipating the guest needs. So we share these preferences with everybody in the hotel, right? You might be thinking there are so many people who come to the hotel, right? Which is true. That's why we have a department who only manages this. Our guest relations department job only manage this, right? And send these preferences out. So if I'm meeting Mr. John, right, I already know what Mr. John had for dinner last night, what he likes, what he doesn't like, and what is he expecting tomorrow, right? And this is shared every single day. We have something called as an operational meeting, right? We go through all the guest preferences, and every department takes a note, right? And obviously they have their own cheat cards, which they keep with them, and they refer to this before they start an interaction with any guest, right? So the housekeeper also knows when this person is going to check out, what his or her plans are, and it's a little bit more elaborate, right? So just in a nutshell, so we discuss this on a regular basis. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Next question, Pak Subin. Is there TAT standards for handling customer complaint? What I'm
Yes.
unsure about what TAT is, but please go ahead. Maybe you're more familiar.
TAT, I don't know what TAT is, but
yeah, okay.
But yes, there are standards how you handle. But most important, right? Like I started from the beginning, right? Is a genuine care, right? So our expectation is that you handle the customer, make sure that you genuinely care about the customer. You're not handling a complaint, right? That's not good enough at the Ritz Carlton, right? You have to make sure that you're working from the heart, you listen to the customer, and you come up with a resolution. And like I said, our ladies and gentlemen are empowered, right? So everybody, whether it's a housekeeper, whether it's a bellboy, whether it's a kitchen stewarding, they have the authority without asking anybody in the hotel to find a resolution for a guest up to $2,000 on their own. They don't have to ask anybody for that.
Okay, maybe last question, Pak Subin. You mentioned about genuine care. Maybe last question is from me. You mentioned one of the key part is actually getting right from the beginning, right? The recruitment, right? How important is recruitment versus, or you can just take in anybody and then basically everybody is groomable? I mean, what is your experience for this? Like, how groomable is somebody to be like very deliver the mystique, the functional, emotional, and then mystique, right? The highest level. Is it something that's groomable, or it is just something like, this person has it, and then if not, I mean, everyone has a different standard, from their upbringing. Please go ahead, last one.
Yeah. So, Robert, that's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked that because, I remember when I first joined the company, it was a funny story. Let me, sorry, I'm just looking at the time. So, I joined the company by accident, right? So I was actually I used to work for an Italian fashion house hotel, and I was actually moving somewhere else. And I got a call from one of the general managers of the Ritz Carlton in Doha. And, I was actually shutting my suitcase, going to travel to another destination. And I was in Kuwait at that time. So I asked my wife, pick up the phone, I think, and then she came to me and she said, oh, it's an international number. So maybe you want to pick up the call. So it was, from the general manager there. And then I told him, see, I'm moving as a hotel manager somewhere. My flight is day after tomorrow. So thank you for the offer, but, I'm already committed. So, Horst at that time, he told me, Doha was like 45 minutes away by flight. He said, get on the flight, you're 45 minutes away. You have still 2 days to go. Come and see us. If you like us, stay. If you don't like us, you can go. I said, okay, why not? Right. So I took that up. I went there, and then the rest is history. So
Okay.
what I'm trying to say here is that you are either made for it or you're not, right? So your values that you have when you grew up has to be aligned with the company's values, right? Because attitude is something that you cannot teach, right? You can teach skills, but your values have to be aligned with the company values, right? If somebody where genuine care doesn't come naturally to that person, it's very difficult to teach that, right? So the answer to your question is, we select, for the attitude more than the skills.
Okay, so I think it's time. Thank you, Pak Subin. Thank you for the participants. Please, I think we have these regular free webinars every 2 weeks. Please visit our Instagram for more information. Thank you so much, Pak Subin.
Thank
all
you.
the best for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for the participants.
Yeah.
Thank you. See you next time.
My apologies. I had to rush through a lot of things.
All right.
This is a very passionate topic for me, and I feel it probably required much more time, but
Okay.
I hope they got something out of it. Thank you.
All right, for sure. Thank you. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.